Check it out.
This is the SEC Insider Hit. It's driven by the John Deere tractors at Mississippi Ag. Visit agup.com to find a retail location near you.
Let's go.
Good morning. Welcome in. We are the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN. I see where Ole Miss's best basketball player, Devontae Shuler, turns 23 today. See, that's what you want in college basketball. There's a reason why he's so good. One, he's good, but he's playing against a bunch of 19-year-olds. That's what you want. You don't get that often. But he's just a really good – he's not an NBA player, but he's a really high-level college basketball player. Man, when you get a kid who's 23 years old and has played as much as he's played in as many games as he's played in, it's no wonder he made the game-winning shot over the weekend against Auburn at Auburn. He's been there and seen it all, done it all. You want as many 22 and 23-year-olds playing 19-year-olds as you can get.
Yeah, that works well in your
right?
favor.
Those numbers are pretty simple. And the gap is monster at that age.
Yeah.
Mentally and I'm not just talking about physically. I'm talking about between the years.
Yeah.
I mean, that young man's played day one. He's been on he's been in about 80 road games.
Yeah.
He's seen it all. So that's just something to think about. And he's an outstanding player, too. Devontae Shuler turned 23 today. Steve Robertson will join us in the next few minutes. GenesPage.com, Hail State Insider. David Johnson, Rebels 247 Ole Miss Insider at 8:35. And then Teddy Cahill, National College Baseball writer with Baseball America, who has Ole Miss and Mississippi State as national seeds this year. Teddy Cahill will join us at 9:35. We'll start with the Rebs and then go with the Dogs. So we'll go a little Nikhazy, Hoagland, and our main man, Derek Diamond, and then we'll go on over to what all is happening at Mississippi State. So 3 good guests today. Hey, I'm excited about this partnership. It was super cool when we got this phone call, and want to let you know that we have partnered with XL Water and Coffee. XL Water and Coffee, the #1 residential bottled water delivery service for your family in the Jackson metro area. So here's what's cool about this thing. It's all online. You can go to wateratmydoor.com, wateratmydoor.com, and you can get 50% off your initial order with discount code BOUNDS. That's my last name. So discount code BOUNDS. That's wateratmydoor.com. Now, they offer other products and services, but it is the #1 residential bottled water delivery service for your family. They'll make it easy. XL Water and Coffee. Go to wateratmydoor.com and get 50% off your initial order with discount code BOUNDS. That's discount code BOUNDS. Water, Gatorade, Bubbler, they'll deliver it to your door. Welcome in, welcome in. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by XL Water and Coffee. We're live in the Bank Plus studio, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, WRKS. We'll take a quick phone call. Rebel Greg would like to discuss travel ball. Rebel Greg, what's up?
Hey, good morning, guys. Listen, I just want to piggyback on what you said about the travel ball and then all the high school rankings and stuff. You know, I'm a little older than you, but back in the day, you know, when we played baseball, we played the local boys club league and then had an all-star, and that was it. We didn't have no real training on techniques, drills, and stuff like that. Now this travel ball is so crazy. I have an 11-year-old that's been playing, and I mean it's constantly D-back every weekend. It's every day. It's lessons. You got to pay for lessons, and it's so competitive now. These kids are being taught. I mean, you go out and watch 10 and 11-year-olds make these plays, it's unreal. Back when I played, I mean, you done good getting it over to first base, and then they're making these horrendous all-star plays. It's just unreal. And now you're seeing it develop in high school. All these top players for Jackson Prep and Hartfield, man, they're at DBAT every night. I see them in there hitting and stuff.
Sure.
And it's just, you're starting to see the benefits.
Yeah,
man. I just wanted to pass that on. Y'all have a good one.
Hey, thanks for the call. Yeah, we've never seen anything like this. The talent from DeSoto County down to the coast and in the Jackson metro area. It's now, we were behind in travel baseball, and not that we couldn't produce good athletes and good players. This state will always do that. In the Sun Belt, it's competitive. People are committed. We love it. All right. But when you look at the top 10 or 12 programs in the state of Mississippi, baseball-wise, in high school, never, ever, ever in the history of the state have you witnessed anything like this in the MAIS and MHSAA. Loaded rosters, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Well, there's more coming because of so much travel ball being played. This was happening in Louisiana, Texas, Alabama, and Georgia, but we're now seeing the first big wave of talent. And where, Ron Polk, the majority of his talent was signed out of state for years. And even the last 20 years, Bianco went all over the place. And Mississippi State's done well out of state. And Lamonis and Bianco can go just about anywhere. But now you're going to have more refined and advanced players where you had so much development to do, which was fine, but they weren't going to be ready until their sophomore, junior year. This is a loaded class of baseball players, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and there's more coming. And that's because of, 10,000-hour rule reps, playing games, 70 games a year, and all that stuff. Some of it's not good. A lot of it is good. So, all right, Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, presented by XL Water and Coffee, the number one bottled water residential bottled water delivery service for your family in the Jackson metro area. Go to wateratmydoor.com and get 50% off your initial order with discount code BOUNDS. That's discount code BOUNDS, wateratmydoor.com. We are going to go to the Coors Light guest line. Welcome in Steve Robertson, Hail State Insider, and genespage.com, the Boneyard Podcast. Steve, thanks for joining us so early. You did a recap on recruiting on genespage.com, kind of walked your members through what all happened. I want to start with John Lewis. There's three, maybe a few more. Who knows what's going to happen 3 years from now? Deion Smith, John Lewis, MJ Daniels, could be someone else that ends up becoming the star of the class, so to speak, and starts for multiple years at either Mississippi State, LSU, or Ole Miss. But walk us through the John Lewis recruitment and who they had to beat and what a big get that was for Mississippi State.
Well, yeah, he's one of those guys, too, we had heard about for a while. But, back in the spring, there were a lot of people saying, well, I just don't know if he's going to be able to qualify. And so he hit the radar late. Was never really any question about his ability. It's just some people wondered, would he have to go to junior college first? And, you and I have some mutual friends that were saying, look, this guy deserves a Division I offer. Things are going to happen for him. Well, then lo and behold, it does look like he's going to qualify, and all of a sudden he is going to qualify. And State and Ole Miss both get involved there. And, in the end, it boiled down, it was State over Florida State. There was a lot of optimism for Ole Miss at one point, and then there just wasn't a lot of facts to support that. And once State really got involved and really pushed to get him done, it was pretty much a done deal. He wanted to come to Mississippi State. I think you make a good point, too. I think in hindsight, a couple of years from now, provided all these guys stay healthy, I think you're going to look back and say, you know what, this John Lewis, while he had 4 stars next to his name, if he had the full benefit of the recruiting process, he's probably a guy that would have had 25, 30 offers, because I think he is going to be a great college football player and will probably have a chance to play really early. But once State really let him know he was a priority, that there really wasn't any second guessing or anything like that. He was done.
Where do you project him Is he more of an edge rusher, outside linebacker, edge rusher? He'll end up being an edge rusher because he's going to put on a lot of weight. Where do you see him 2 years from now, 3 years from now?
Yeah, I think there's a good chance he stays at Sam. I mean, obviously they walk that guy up in the box sometimes and let him, rush off the edge. But, John Lewis is that long-rangey guy that can really get out and run and cover in space. And so I don't see him as a guy that will outgrow that. I think that he's a guy that will only get bigger, faster, and stronger. But, yeah, I do think he'll stay at linebacker. I think he's got the frame to carry 10, 15 pounds of muscle without really hurting his foot speed or his dexterity. But, this is, again, one of those great Mississippi football players that, kind of is a great story and a guy who's really – his story is just really beginning.
Deion Smith signed with LSU. Who was really in it, and how did it shake out the last 4 or 5 months going into signing day with Deion Smith, wide receiver out of Provine and JA?
When he flipped from Mississippi State to LSU, I mean, there were so many people around that, especially in the Jackson metro area, said, there's no way this thing is over. State and Ole Miss both will be real factors, and they tried to be. I mean, State and Ole Miss continue to recruit him, as they should have. He's probably one of the top 10 receivers that I've covered in the state of Mississippi. I think that he is a very, very special player. But to be honest with you, that there just was no chatter in those final few weeks heading up to National Signing Day that really had any bite to it. There was some wishful thinking out there. A lot of people thought, State can kind of climb back in this thing, or Ole Miss has got momentum. I give Deion a lot of credit that, once he committed to LSU, even when everybody was shooting darts at him late, he hung in there. And there was a lot of negative recruiting that went on, obviously. Is Coach O going to be there and that sort of stuff? But, but Deion hung in there. And I think it says a lot about him. I know a lot of people early on just really felt like it was going to be a circus, but it really never was. I mean, Deion, made the commitment and then shut it down, and then he had every opportunity to flip later in the process, but he stayed true to his word.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports on the Coors Light guest line. MJ Daniels was committed to Mississippi State, eventually signed with Ole Miss. What really played out there the last 90 days?
Well, it was really about the last 9 to 10 days.
Okay.
MJ said all the right things throughout the process, and there was some confidence from the Ole Miss side that they could kind of get in there and stay in there. But the thing about it is like every step of the way, it's like every time there would be something forecast about, well, he's going to go to an Ole Miss football game, then he wouldn't go. He's going to go do this, and then he wouldn't go. And then he goes to the Egg Bowl and he says, I went to an Ole Miss football game, but I went to go watch Mississippi State play. And so everything seemed to be kind of trending in the right direction. And with about 10 days to go, started getting some reports down there that his dad, who had been very much in favor of him going to Mississippi State, all of a sudden his dad had kind of shifted his allegiance and felt that MJ should go to Ole Miss. And so Mom was kind of okay with whatever MJ wanted, and it was about what MJ was trying to figure out. But down the stretch, the dad was really involved with kind of pushing him to Ole Miss, and that's part of recruiting. Is you find out who has influence. You find out, which parent, which coach, which relative or whatever is the person that can get in their ear and say, listen, this is the best move for you. And that's what Ole Miss did. Ole Miss was able to flip the dad away from Mississippi State, and ultimately that led to MJ flipping away from Mississippi State.
What happened with Antonio Harmon?
Really not a whole lot. It's like one of those things with Harmon is that, early on he had a lot of options, and it is remarkable to see what happened with him in Mississippi State over the course of last year. This time last year, Antonio Harmon was not even mentioning Mississippi State, was not in communication with Mississippi State. And then in the end, it was basically Mississippi State all the way. And, a lot of it had to do, Antonio really wanted to stay closer to home and have the opportunity to play in the SEC. But I give Steve Spurrier Jr. a lot of credit because, a lot of coaches at times, they kind of get in their feelings a little bit, and so it's like, well, this kid didn't show us any love, and so we're just going to kind of move on from him. Well, you can do that with an out-of-state guy, but when you got a guy just down the road from you, it's probably best to kind of maintain a relationship. And so when State got ready to really go finish out this wide receiver class, because of the fact that Spurrier had kind of hung in the pocket there a little bit and stayed in contact with Harmon, they were able to kind of reconnect when Antonio's options were a little more limited. And also the reality of the process kind of sets in for guys too. And it's funny, we're doing this now. Like, you talk to these juniors, and every one of them says, I'll go anywhere in the country to play college football. I'll go wherever I have to go. And then when they all commit, they say, well, it's close to home. So it's like the reality of that comes in as you get closer to signing day. It's difficult for a kid from Mississippi to get in the car and decide, okay, I'm going to go to Oregon, even though that happened to cycle. I'm going to go to Washington. I'm going to go to, Massachusetts. I mean, it just doesn't happen. As Ed Orgeron said when he was here in Mississippi, planes don't fly north when it comes to recruiting. Kids in the South traditionally stay in the South. And so I think that was part of the issue with Antonio Harmon too, is like, you know what, I got a chance to stay home and be close to my friends and family and allow them to kind of celebrate and embrace this decision with me. And I think that played a factor. But I do credit Steve Spurrier Jr. for kind of keeping that window open until State was ready to make a move.
Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone. We're visiting with Steve Robertson, 247 Sports, genespage.com. They've been throwing up a lot of stuff on the 2021 and 2022 classes for recruiting. Steve, let's switch gears here. You talked to Mike Leach within the last day or so. How many players did they really take to Georgia once they started turning this thing around? How many players got on the plane to go to Georgia?
Yeah, I actually spoke to Mike last night. He's a bit of a night owl like me, and I reached out and tried to set up an interview a couple days ago, and he texted me back yesterday, and he goes, hey, I can do it later tonight, and or I can do it tomorrow afternoon. I looked at my watch, and I'm like, goodness, it's already 10 o'clock, So yeah, let's roll, man. Let's do it. Let's get crazy, Mike. And so, yeah, I get him on the phone, and it's 43 players. They took 43. They had, initially I guess they had 49 cleared to play, but, then it late had some issues to pop up. I think a couple of guys with contact tracing type things. A couple of guys had some nagging injuries and weren't going to play. And so it took 43 players to the University of Georgia and still should have won the football game. That's what's so crazy. You look back. People forget at opening drive, Will Rogers comes down and takes State right and puts them in the end zone. And, State had to lead at the half, and, really Georgia had to kind of really battle and kind of take advantage of some inexperience in the State secondary. But I think most people, even the unbiased and potentially biased observers that watch that football game, are probably a little bit surprised that State kept that thing as close as they did, and quite frankly, should have won the football game.
43 players. No wonder when you were watching it on that Saturday night, they kept panning the sideline, and you were like, there's nobody there. But people were trying to figure out exactly how many were there. 43 players to Georgia. What did he say about the facilities in Starkville and administration?
I asked him that question when he got here, last year. Now that he's been there a few weeks, I said, Mike, do you have what you need to win here? Do you have the facilities that maybe are on par with what you expected for the SEC? And back in those days, he's like, well, I hadn't used them enough. I don't really know yet. Maybe we'll get to a practice. So, again, I bring it up again. I said, Mike, now you've had an opportunity to be here for a year. He's very pleased with the facilities. And he goes, I'm probably more pleased with the facilities than the administration is. Maybe John and them have seen some things that perhaps they want to add here. He goes, but I'm really happy with what we have. He goes, but there's no end to what we want. As coaches, there's always something else because you want the newest and best technology for your team and for your players and your coaching staff. But, and you got to remember, he's coming in from Pullman, Washington, and that's, Washington State, the lowest athletic budget in the Power Five. And so, for him, it's almost like, when he's come in from a place that had two off the field recruiting staff members and, very limited budget there. And he comes here and all of a sudden he's got all these things available. That's true. Two.
God.
And he brought both of them with him. Dave Emmerich and Brittany Thackeray. They were the off the field recruiting staff, and then they used student workers to help do the rest of it. I mean, it's remarkable. And so, he says he's got what he needs to win, but there's some things they're working on, obviously. But it was the thing. It seems like everybody that comes in here says, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this. I think it's the first coach that's ever come in and says, you know what, this is okay.
Interesting. Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show. Ty Cooper signed out of Louisville, Mississippi. They won it. He's a D lineman, considered one of the best defensive linemen in the state. A lot of people are wondering why he isn't rated higher, but what happened with his recruitment the last couple of months?
Well, I'll agree with the fact that he should be rated a little bit higher. Of course, it's one of those things. As it appears that State's going to win the battle with Ole Miss. Of course, State people are like, oh yeah, well he should be rated higher. When they thought he was going to Ole Miss, you're like, oh yeah, he's overrated. I mean, it's funny how it's funny how that works. And it's on both sides of any rivalry, really. But there was a lot of talk the day that Mississippi State offered that Ty Cooper might go ahead and commit. I mean, there was, matter of fact, Paul Jones and I had kind of traded some texts. I said, hey, I'm hearing that Ty's going to talk with his dad. This thing might happen today. Well, then ultimately they get home and say, well, we're going to sit down as a family and discuss this. Well, then Ole Miss offers, and Deke gets in there and does a great job and kind of keeps things, back and forth. And I really believe if Deke Adams hadn't been at Ole Miss, that Ty Cooper would have committed to Mississippi State long before. And I asked Ty in the last interview I did with him before signing that, so was there ever a point when you nearly committed to any school? And he goes, yeah, and he didn't want to talk about it, but he said, yeah, there was at least 2 times that I really thought about committing and kind of getting this thing over with. But ultimately, he says he wanted to be at Mississippi State. He wanted to be a Mississippi State Bulldog. And I really think once Deke was dismissed at Ole Miss, it removed all doubt. I think State would have got him anyway, but Deke made it awfully interesting. But it was really kind of a no contest down the stretch. I mean, Ole Miss had other needs and other targets. But, it's one of those things, too. A lot of people get caught up in, well, on signing day, what were his options? Okay, that's cool. Well, at some point, somebody put a stamp on an envelope and mailed an offer to this kid throughout the process. And you don't offer anybody you're not willing to take at some point. And so that people get hung up on that. At some point, Ole Miss really wanted Ty Cooper. In the end, they probably didn't. But at some point, he could have committed to Ole Miss, and I'm sure had been happy and had a good career there. But ultimately, Mississippi State was in his heart, and so he became a Mississippi State Bulldog.
25 minutes up the road, Ty Cooper signs with MSU. Steve, I've got 1 minute. Transfers. Randy Charlton, Makai Polk, Jalen Green. Which one do you expect to have the biggest impact, maybe even in the spring before August and Labor Day?
Well, I think it'll probably be Jalen Green. I think it might need to be Randy Charlton. I think State's really going to need to generate some pass rush. You've got some numbers in the secondary, but Jalen Green obviously is a star. But I think Randy Charlton's a guy that probably needs to be a big player in the spring and fall for Mississippi State. It's because you lose Marquis Spencer and Kobe Jones. You've got some numbers there, but you don't have much experience. You really need him to come out and have a big year.
Steve Robertson, you can find a lot of this on genespage.com, 247 Sports, also the Boneyard podcast. He joined us on the Coors Light guest line. Thanks, Steve. We'll catch up on 2022 in the next week or so. Appreciate it.
See you soon.
All right, so Steve told us yesterday he felt like that up to 40 kids could receive Power 5 offers. I want y'all to think about that for a second in this 2022 class, and that you've got a few dozen that Ole Miss is going to win several battles, Mississippi State's going to win several battles, and there's not a penny's worth of difference. In other words, it's deep, very, very, very athletic class in the 2022 class. You've already got over 20 that have received Power 5 offers. You get to 30, 40, that's a lot of depth. Just something to think about. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by XL Water and Coffee, the #1 residential bottled water delivery service for your family. Go to wateratmydoor.com and get 50% off your initial order with discount code BOUNDS. That's wateratmydoor.com.